Okay. So, hello, Polkadot communities. I'm Chris from Polkadot Insider, and today I'm pleased to have a Chen hosting a very special interview with a very special guest on Polkadot ecosystem. Um, Please welcome Miss Bette Chen, co-founder at Acala Network, an app chain powering Web3 finance, as well as the first parachain on Polkadot. In case you don't know about Polkadot Insider before, we are a media channel and education platform updating news, data analytics, and research about projects to support the communities get more intuitive insight about Polkadot ecosystem. So in this interview today, we have an opportunity to learn more about Acala network and also DeFi industry in general. So our guest today will answer all the questions about like our LSDFi, stablecoin, and also going to discuss about the latest upgrade of Acala. So let's warm up with an introduction, okay? Could you please tell the communities more about yourself? What is your background, and when and why did you start participate in the Web3 space as well as Polkadot ecosystem with Acala?
Thanks, Chris, for having me here. Very happy to join Polkadot Insider to share some of the stories and insights and thoughts today. So my name is Bette. I'm one of the co-founders of the Acala team. So a bit about myself. I had a software engineering background in undergrad. Also got an MBA, so gone to the dark side. So I am a software engineer by trade, and also later on is also product manager by trade before I get into Web3, get into crypto professionally. And it was 2019, I believe, second half of the year, that we decided to form a team and start building on top of Polkadot. And truth be told, so it's 2023. So it has been 4 years. So it's a very long time as an entrepreneur building in the ecosystem. So, and there's certainly a lot that we've done. And then I'm sure we're going to share a little bit about today, and also a lot we have learned, and hopefully we can also share a little bit about that today. And then when we first joined Polkadot, I think we are one of the earliest builders in the ecosystem. We were originally building on Ethereum for a currency project, trading project, building smart contracts. But we saw the limitations of Ethereum, and we also were mesmerized by what the vision of Polkadot and also what Gavin has laid out in front of our eyes. And then we were attracted very much by the tech and also Gavin's sort of developer following, and we came into the Polkadot ecosystem and start building. And and the rest is, I guess, history. So yeah.
Yeah, thanks for very specific introduction. I believe it has been a long road, right? So liquidity is considered as one of the most important element of DeFi, and your team Acala focuses very specifically on DeFi. So how do you feel about liquidity status of Polkadot ecosystem in general? And what would be the good way to sustain the liquidity flow in the whole ecosystem?
You asked a very critical question. I think this is a question that not just ourselves, but also I think everyone who's building in the Polkadot ecosystem needs to think very critically about. So I want to use an analogy, see if you can get it. So I think liquidity is like water in real life, right? And then in a solo chain ecosystem, let's say pre-L2 Ethereum, so that's the old Ethereum, and it is like a big reservoir, right? And then all the water, or you say liquidity, is in one single pond, right? And then all the protocols are like farms, like real farms. You've got tractors, crops, and buildings, businesses, individual household building around the pond. So they are all consuming water from the same pond, right? So farms will use the water to irrigate. buildings will use it for industrial or commercial uses, and then also household use it for dishwashing and things like that. So and at the same time, what is interesting about that single pond is water in the farm can be reused. Well, you can resanitize it, purify it, and then you can reuse it in the commercial building. And then same thing for the commercial building water, you can reuse it in the household, right? So this is, in the crypto term, is tokenization. So when you tokenize something, that same set of asset, you can use it in one place, and then you can then use it in a different place for same or different purposes, right? So then liquidity is reused. So basically $100 worth of asset, then if you do it 3 times, that's $300 worth of liquidity that are floating through the pond, from the same pond, right? And then if you do this often enough and you're creative enough, like this is all the protocols and use cases in the likes of Maker, like Aave, Compound in the early days, then the demand starts to go up, right? And this gives you I guess, a virtuous cycle for the demand of the network goes up and the value of the network also goes up. And you can also think about this like rainfall, right? So when the value go up, the rain falls more, and then the pond becomes bigger. This is like Ethereum accumulating values, and at the same time, all the protocols built on top of it help each other to accumulate value, and it all get growing. When it first started, right? So if you take that as an analogy, water, ponds, and things like that, when you go into L2 now, Ethereum, they are not necessarily making the pond bigger, right? Because the pond is that one pond, but they are basically providing cheaper utility, like cheaper gas and things like that, or added functionality like maybe ZK and things like that. And so and they basically diverge all the water from the big pond into smaller ponds, right? And then if we look at, I guess, Polkadot specifically, then the big pond is the relay chain, yeah? The challenge there is on the relay chain, the big pond has only one thing, that's staking on the relay chain. And staking, if you use the same analogy, is basically storage of water. It's not doing much. It's basically storage of water. There's no farms, there's no buildings, there's no commercial usage, no residential usage on the pond for Polkadot. And parachains, technically, they are separate ponds, right? So they are little ponds. And you actually need piping and then different ways to route the water from one pond to another, right? And so you don't actually have the natural, or if you like, organic accumulation process of liquidity like Solo Chain or like Ethereum or other solo chains. And then at the same time, whatever the small ponds are doing, like parachains are doing, the effect is fractional instead of exponential, right? If you do it the same way, that's what I'm saying. It's fractional instead of exponential. That's very important because in a solo chain, everything you do add up. But in the architecture of Polkadot, which is relay chain, parachain, which is more decentralized, then everything you do is fractionalizing the liquidity. And because you are not actually drinking, using, or growing from the same pond, well, you don't have the compound effects of innovation and composability. And because of this fundamental difference, I think we need to collectively have a complete different mindset and also way to build liquidity differently. This may not be the case from the very beginning because everyone has come from solo chain, right? Everybody think in terms of solo chain, bootstrapping and doing the same thing. And also at the same time, more importantly, I think liquidity has to be built intentionally because, like things, cities, ponds, farms, they tend towards disorder or entropy. If you don't look after them, you don't have intention, you don't have facilities built to help grow the liquidity, it's only going to go lower, right? It's not going to go higher. So so I think for that matter, Polkadot is a super innovative and also disruptive technology and architecture, so that the way that we build liquidity also need to think very differently. And this is very much not discussed in our ecosystem, because we are very much technology focused, and we don't have much discussion or forum on this. So I'm very happy that you actually bring this up. If this might be the beginning of getting people started talking about these ideas, and also how we can build liquidity in a different way, right? And this is also part of what inspires Acala to build 2.0. At least we want to try to have innovative ideas to build liquidity in a different way, and try a different method to create liquidity, right? Whether we succeed or not, we don't know. Like as entrepreneur, you just have to keep building and march forward. So so that's a long way to answer your question, but hopefully that gets people thinking and discussing.
Yeah. Thanks for your answer. Because I believe that liquidity is some kinds of very foundations of the whole DeFi system. So I would link this to another very interesting question that currently LSDFi is currently becoming a go-to concept for a lot of new DeFi projects that users can stake their token to get derivative tokens and use for another DeFi use cases. So do you think it's good and maybe it's just very sustainable in the future?
Well, I think LSD is going to be the new base layer. We saw this when we first started Acala, right? So that was 4 years ago. That's why we built the L. Homer protocol and hoping that that's the base layer. And then we can start, composing on top of it. But of course, we didn't address the liquidity challenge that I mentioned just now. But at the same time, this concept that you're talking about, a go-to concept, it's only because Ethereum proof of stake has gone live recently, and then it becomes a really hot topic, and it seems the whole world now realize, oh, LSDFi is so hot, so interesting, you can build stablecoin on top of it. But we've built all of those before, and the missing piece is exactly what your last question is why are people all talking about it now? Because Ethereum is the big pond. You have to give Ethereum that. It's the super big pond where there's a lot of anticipating farms, buildings, business individuals wanting to use the water in it. That's why, when the new thing comes along, it becomes a huge splash in that pond. It becomes a big thing and everybody's thinking about it. Whereas the thing itself, the LSD itself, it already exists in Polkadot for a long time. And then there's innovations in Polkadot for a long time. I can also even give an example a bit later, specific protocol that we built on Polkadot. Now, it's now also built on Ethereum. And the effect is so much different, right? So that's an interesting thing there. And at the same time, tokenization is the magic word here, and then LSD is doing exactly that, right? So I don't think there's a good or bad. I think in a free market like crypto, the water will just flow from high to low, and then, or if you pump it, it just goes to where it needs to be. So so I think if you can earn yield, at the same time you can do ABC. So that's basically your LSD principal token, and you can also earn yield, and it can be in multiple places. Then I think the market will just move to build on top of LSD. And that's why, we think LSD is going to be the new base layer. And then at the same time, if you look at LSD, the most interesting component is its interest-like product, right? So the yield in LSD is almost like base interest rate for the proof of stake chain. So if that's the case, then there are so many more interesting products that you can build on top. You can trade the yields. You can have derivative products to trade the risk of the yield go up and down, depends on how your proof of stake network is structured. And then on top of that, you can build more and more product, right? So, but of course, this is all lean on top of you've got enough water to go around for people to build on top. So so that's it.
Okay, so I'm curious to know that, I want to talk about stablecoin. So it is like another very important element that we always need to mention, right? So stablecoin in DeFi are now controversial in this space. Still, it's significantly important for the whole DeFi system. So what do you think about the future of stablecoin in DeFi?
I think stablecoin is undoubtedly the killer app. And then by stablecoin, I mean stablecoin as a medium of exchange is the killer app. because you can have stablecoin for leverage, which is the collateralized stablecoin, which you can basically create leverage. That's not quite right, because if you look at the market share, it's undoubtedly the actual stablecoin that's used as medium of exchange. Basically, you use for paying people, for settling or holding your funds, for in a stable asset, and that is the killer app. And this is predominantly USDC, USDT, and also probably the PayPal's new stablecoin as well. So that is the killer app so far, right? And then as for the other type of stablecoin, you have to figure out what is the killer application there. Is it for leveraging, like basically level up your exposure or return for the underlying asset, or are you trying to achieve other purposes, right? So these are all the other type of stablecoin have to answer that question. And then I think at the same time, for stablecoin, the big thing is I think regulation and compliance is on its way already. And then I think there will be certain rules and guidelines on how and what is security or not, and the way that you create stablecoin. So you will probably see, well, right now there's like pure DeFi stablecoin that doesn't touch anything in real world asset, right? And you can see they always stay very small because that's by nature. We can get into a whole discussion on that, but by nature they can't scale if you're built purely on crypto, and don't use any other new mechanism that are yet to be invented. And then there is this whole sort of compliant stablecoin, namely, type of USDC type of stablecoin. And now, and also interesting is we also see somewhere in between. So there's new protocol called Athena, right? So they are kind of in between. They are DeFi protocol, but they use CeFi, like exchanges, to do hedging and a whole bunch of stuff that actually solve some of the problems that pure DeFi stablecoin doesn't solve, and which actually makes a very interesting case to study. But at the same time, it is in a very much regulatory gray area. So there's a lot of uncertainty in that as well. So stablecoin is at a crossroad, right? So if you are talking about medium of exchange, definitely, good use case, killer app. But the others, there's a question mark there. And then also mechanisms versus regulation and compliance requirement in the future, there's a huge uncertainty. So anyone who's like going into that space and innovating, is taking a lot of, risk. But at the same time, there's lots of good innovation coming in that space as well. So so certainly I think there's a lot to expect in that space.
Okay, so beside LSDFi and stablecoin, what do you think about all the common trends right now, such as real-world assets, and how does it impact to the whole blockchain space and also a Polkadot ecosystem? And will Acala have any plan to make it happen?
Yeah, so I think when you look at what is already available on crypto and what is not, and there's only tiny little bit of the use cases that we explored on the crypto side. An example is, derivative markets, right? So the real world derivative market is like 500 or 600 trillion dollars. And it's usually multiple times bigger than the actual asset. And then in crypto world, it's the same, right? Majority of the trading volume is in derivative, but even that is only 1 or 2 trillion. So it's very, very tiny. And the whole financial world, there's so much more things that people can actually do and create on a decentralized network that we haven't done today. So certainly there's a lot more that we can do. But again, it goes back to Polkadot is, I think for Polkadot, our tech is leading way ahead of our time. Yet there's a big gap between the tech and the actual farms, buildings, businesses, individuals who are actually using, actually having liquidity to actually make it useful. I think that is the role of entrepreneurs like Acala and then other teams, builders in the space have to build, because this is not just about building products, because farms and buildings, you can think of the protocols as products, right? And then you can think about Polkadot as the land, right? The pond itself. But right now the challenge is there's no water.
Okay.
So the way that you have to think about this problem or interesting challenge is how do you get water into the pond? Or the pond has some water, but it doesn't quite grow because you kind of store it into a storage, which is staking, right? You don't do anything with it, right? So now we have to think about ways, right? So how do we get the water out? Well, now to the smaller ponds, to the parachains, and then also how do you actually make it all can go around, which is what I talk about, composable or compounding effect of it. And we not only lack the discussion and thinking about these things, we also lack infrastructure. So an example is, we only have the raw tech, which is the country road, right? We have XCM, which is like a country road. You use trucks to actually get the water from one city to another, one pond to another, right? If you're an app, today it's very difficult to do what I just said, right? So, have water routing from places to places and have the compounding effect and then be able to build on top of each other, basically enjoying each other's success and then help and amplify each other's success. This is what we are lacking. But in order to get to this point, you actually need to build tooling. And this is why unconsciously or consciously, Acala has been doing. And then also a lot of people didn't understand why do we contribute in some of the tooling that we do, right? So this is like the ORML library, the X tokens, and then also recently there's like, the chain level, like the subway, chopsticks, in various aspects, what it's trying to achieve is like having a much easier, smoother way so we can build up the stack so that all the chains, it's almost like you have a meta chain level that application is built on top of this meta parachain, which actually combines all the chains together, and then you can just build stuff on top of it. But we are a bit distant from that, and just still lacking infrastructure, tooling, as well as protocols to build on top of that. But that's why we're here, right? We're builders, and that's the problem we are solving. So
so I want to ask these couple questions because I believe that not just me and all the communities want to hear about this. When Polkadot needs a strong DeFi system to attract and maintain the role of end user, right? So now let's talk more about Acala. Like, the Exodus upgrade is one of the most enhancement plans within Acala 2.0. So could you provide an overview of it and what are the objectives of Acala Exodus upgrade?
Yeah, sure. So Acala 1.0 is about protocols and products, right? So 1.0, we've delivered all the things in a white paper. It's got the stablecoin, it's got the LSD, it's got the exchange, right? So it's basically, we've built a farm there, we've built the buildings there, but the farms and buildings, the tractors, it won't go if we don't have, the water that I just talked about, right? You need the water for it to be able to get rolling and then have the compounding effect. And then for the 2.0, that's exactly what we are focusing on. So for the 2.0, our goal is to build a liquidity layer for Web3. So basically trying to solve the problem of what I just talked about. I don't know whether we can single-handedly solve the entire problem, but at least we think that with our approach, we're able to elevate the water level in the reservoir that are currently in the big pond, right? And then for the Acala 2.0, then building the liquidity layer requires multiple things. There's infrastructure side of things that we need to build that connects everybody. And then there's also commercial sides and also protocol level things that we need to build so that there is an ecosystem around it that will give you that compound effect that are able to bring that vision to life. And then to go into a little bit more specifics, for the Acala 2.0, there are 3 tracks that we laid out. The first track is for the AUSD stablecoin track. And for AUSD stablecoin, as I mentioned, all the challenges of the stablecoin currently, and the AUSD has the same, right? So it's a very small stablecoin, and the market is very small. The route to other farms are not built yet, right? So there's limited usage, the liquidity is low. So even the stable coin is pegged, and then the utility is not there, right? And then there's also, if you want to get it to the next level, I think there needs to be new mechanism. So that's why I mentioned, the DeFi compliant, there's also in between innovations that are currently happening. So if we were to do a proper stable coin, it will need to be new mechanism, because you need more capital efficient ways to bootstrap this stuff. But most importantly is actually you need to figure out what is the actual utility for that. Because if you're only talking about medium of exchange, then USDC is probably your go-to. You can solve that problem. But if you're talking about other use cases, then there's a lot of room that we can innovate in it. So instead of to patch the current protocol, we open it up. So open it up means AUSD is migrating to a seed product, and this does two things. And then one is it allows existing users or the vault owners be able to exit the product gracefully, so they can just leave if they don't want to be in a seed product. And two is for users who want to come in or continue to basically trade AC or hold AC with a view of the AC treasury, which is converted from the collateral base that are currently in AUSD protocol into the AC treasury. And then those AC treasury, consists of, I think some DOT, some ACA, some USDC, so there's some solid assets there. So, and then each one of them, DOT and ACA can go into staking later on. And then we're also contributing network revenue, part of it into the AC treasury, so that the treasury hopefully can actually grow over time. And then once it get to a certain level, and then folks with the AC ticket or token can actually redeem it. So it is a very interesting product, even though I explain it in a way that it seems very plain, but then we already have folks who are building on top of it to create options market, right? Basically prediction of where AC will go up and down. So once you open it up, and there's a lot more, I guess, interesting things that you can do with it, and people can create different apps on top of it for where it's heading, right? So this is one part of the Exodus upgrade. And then the second part of it is the universal asset hub. So this is basically, we want to build, what I mentioned is like the meta parachain, right? So, but we're not quite there yet. So we're one layer down. So this is basically, we're creating a platform where assets can, or liquidity can flow from anywhere to start with. And then secondly, we want to build an ecosystem based around LSDFi. So because we think LSD is going to be the new base layer, so we're gonna help create the LSDFi ecosystem on top of Acala, and then be able to, I guess, build up the reservoir, build up the pond. And then at the same time, because we also have the infrastructure to route it to multiple different places, so that you then have the facility of, hopefully it's not becoming fractional, it's actually becoming compounding, right? But I think there's still more things that needs to be built to actually reach that level. But at least this is what we are doing in our bid to achieve a higher liquidity level in that regard. And then and this is enabled by a number of things technically, but also enabled by ACA upgrade as well. So technically, we have the asset router, which we're just about to launch and announce soon, which is the asset router 1.0. So this allows you a single transaction. You can route assets from any L1, L2, any solo chain to any parachains, right? So this is a little bit closer to the meta parachain or meta chain that I mentioned, but well, I think it can still get better. So that's the technical layer there. And then we've also got our EVM Plus. So our EVM Plus is obviously like EVM compatible, but that's not the killer there. The killer is fully substrate compatible, because it's built right up front with substrate in it. all the transactions and substrate, which means it's powerful, right? So it can do all the crazy crushing stuff very easily, integrating with the whole parachain Polkadot ecosystem. But of course, on the user experience end or developer experience end, it's Ethereum, right? So basically the water can flow through very easily because you can transfer your smart contracts onto the EVM very easily. But at the same time, the engine behind it is the next generation tech, which is provided by Substrate and Polkadot, right? So that's the foundation layer of the universal asset hub. And then on the ecosystem side of it, obviously with the EVM, then we can build up an LSDFi centric sort of ecosystem. So there's multiple applications that we are currently working closely with. Hopefully they get to announce and share their app very soon. And then at the same time, we are also having an LSD season coming soon. So I'll leave it at that. I'm sure you got questions after that I can maybe give specifics on those things. Yeah. So that's sort of what we are building in the Acala 2.0. And then, of course, the last element I forgot to mention is the ACA upgrade, right? So basically, ACA upgrade is creating this alignment between growing ecosystem and also the ACA holders, right? So for 1.0, ACA holders are passive. So they don't do much. They just hold a token. And for 2.0, ACA token holders are active. So they stake, and then obviously they get staking reward, but at the same time, they support and also enjoy the growth of the Acala ecosystem, the LSDFi ecosystem growth. So that makes it like a flying wheel, hopefully. And then we'll be able to help we achieve the liquidity goal in the 2.0. So there you go.
Okay. So there are a lot of progress of a solid upgrade, right? So what would be the most important and very key milestone that Acala want to achieve in all the upgrades?
So we actually had quite a detailed breakdown in our execution roadmap. So as I mentioned, there are 3 tracks, and then each track is also broken down into phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. So which I think we can share that link to you later, and there's like charts and graphs and showing where we're at. So we've already been executing along the roadmap. So we are now, I think we've completed the ACA phase 1 for the emission, and then we're waiting for the burn to happen in the next runtime upgrade. And then the next phase for ACA upgrade is staking, which we are currently in development and auditing. So hopefully will come out fairly soon. And then that's how we roll. And then the next work stream is the ACID. And then ACID phase 1 is also being rolled out. So the ACID conversion. So now you can see the AC pools on Acala, on Moonbeam, and also on other sort of DEXs. So that's phase 1. And then phase 2 is the redemption part. And then also phase 2 is the conversion, the vault conversion part. And then phase 3 is the redemption part. They are also currently under development and auditing. So that will actually get rolled out once they are ready. And then for the Universal Asset Hub, also phase 1, the router is about to get rolled out. And then also the LSD season is about to come. So which means, you get staking for DOT, T dot, L dot, LC dot, a whole bunch of dot, derivatives or dot, assets that you're going to have various different type of staking make available for them to build up the base layer. So so that's also phase 1, and then we'll gradually roll out phase 2 and phase 3, which will also bring Ethereum side of assets and projects that we work with to actually kind of create interesting products together there. So you can see they're not linear; they're basically stacked on top of each other, and they will get rolled out as they become ready. So
Okay. So I believe that collaboration, iteration, and also like incubating new dApps built on top of Acala is very important, right? So could you tell us more about any partnership that Acala has formed or is planning to do it in the future, and how you guys can get more builders built on top of Acala?
Yeah, so we've chosen a very specific area to actually bootstrap, so which is LSDFi. So we are gathering folks who are interested in innovations and around the area and build with us. So we've got a few teams that we're working with already. I think the ones that we've already known is like Tapio team, right? So we're building in that's in the Ethereum space, trying to bring liquidity over to Acala. And that's the LSDFi element there. And then we also have a couple others that we haven't announced. And I'm not going to announce it today because it will get announced when it's announced. But they're in the space of, I also kind of alluded to, derivative trading space, which will create very interesting product on top of Acala. And that's also going to come very soon. And then another product is Bitcoin yield. So you can create interesting yield products based on LSD, right? So that's also gonna come when we can announce it. So there's a few of them that we're working very specifically because we are actually protocol builder. So we build products and services, and that's why we're not doing normal things like normal solo chain things like, just get 200 copy and paste contracts here and then just build it. I mean, we welcome all of the smart contract and dApps to come to Acala, but we also would like to support them further to build great products and then could go a lot further and more sustainable products on the network, right? So yeah.
Yeah, so this is the last question that I want to ask you, that are there any upcoming milestone that we should be excited about, or that what are the goals for the future of Acala? Yeah.
Yes, sure. So well, I think folks can actually look up the wiki that we have for the Acala 2.0 roadmap. So we are executing along that roadmap. And specific things that I think you should get exciting about is LSD season. So that's coming hopefully fairly soon. So get your DOT, or if you're holding any T.L. LC or whatever DOT that you have, you should get excited about that because pay attention to our Twitter. That's our main sort of place to announce things these days. And yeah, so there will be program available for you. And then the second thing exciting is ACA staking. That's also coming hopefully soon. So just pay attention when that becomes available. And then more than derivative markets will get launched on Acala as well, probably later, but that will create a lot of interesting things that people can do on top of it as well. And then the last thing is a little bit further down the track is bringing the super big pond like Ethereum and Polkadot as upcoming pond together. So there will be ETH dot sort of LSD based products as well. So folks who are holding DOT, don't sell it. We will have products that you can just hold your DOT, but you get yield exposure on Ethereum, right? So staking yield exposure on Ethereum, and as well as the Ethereum ETH itself. So you don't need to sell. You can have both. So those things are also coming with our Universal Asset Hub or our 2.0 launch. So yeah, so I think that's already probably enough to keep people busy.
Yeah, so bullish on that. So I believe this is the end of our interview today, and it has been a really good conversation with you, a lot of knowledge, and it's important to give the Polkadot communities a general look about the future of DeFi in this ecosystem. So if you are still curious about Acala, we leave some links in the description that I think is helpful to learn more about Acala. So before we say goodbye, do you want to say any words to the community?
No. Well, first of all, thanks, Chris, and you guys contributing to the ecosystem. I think you help, I guess, creating a forum or a channel for people to push out information. Doesn't matter. There's no right or wrong, right? There's people's way of communicating and sharing knowledge, basically. So thanks for doing that in the community to start off. And then also at the same time, as one of the very early builders in the ecosystem, I think it's just there's a lot of grinding, right? The people who are in the ecosystem first are usually bleed the most, right?
Yeah.
You put a lot of years and hard work into the ecosystem. Lots of things are bleeding edge. It doesn't work, and then things doesn't turn out the way that you want, and then things do happen, right? Like last year we had an incident, but it doesn't matter, because if you do have a strong belief like we do, and then you also have the tech and the work that you do to kind of support you, and then you continue to grind, I think we need a lot more builders to actually create this this future together. And then the liquidity challenge that I think Chris brought up, that good question, is for every builder to consider how we can actually work better together, not just like in a superficial way, right, but more in a technical and actual way that we can collaborate and help bring the liquidity up in a much better way in the Polkadot ecosystem. So yeah, so that's all I want to say. So
yeah, cool.
thank you.
So yeah, so thanks for like joining me today, and I believe that I hope that you guys will keep building and like deliver a lot of things to the communities. So see you soon. Yeah. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Chris. Bye.
Bye.